gentlemen, welcome to the meeting of the North Penn School District Board of School Directors. This meeting is a public work session where the board will hear a variety of reports and have discussion regarding topics which may be scheduled for official action at a future meeting. During this meeting, we will not be voting or making the final decision on any topic. Questions and comments by members of the audience will be limited to those topics on the agenda for this night's meeting. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during this meeting. To assure the compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 5 minutes. This limit will permit time for those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. I am not the board president. I am President Pro Tem for this evening. Our colleague, President Bowman, is out this evening. We anticipate him back for the next meeting. I would also add that for those that do need to take longer than 5 minutes, to feel free to do so after you have circulated around and have let others speak. At this time, before we even begin, may I ask those members of the audience that are here specifically for concerns about your bus and busing transportation services, please raise your hand if you would. Anybody here to discuss public transportation, our bus schedules, or any concerns regarding busing? Okay, I'm stumped. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason I'm asking is because there have been some concerns and questions, and by the suggestion of our community relations director and also Dr. Elko, we had arranged for a meeting room to be set up for those parents that had such concerns so that they could be specifically and addressed face-to-face by Bill Hartenstein in charge of transportation. We have representation from Ryder and also Mr. Cotran from our bus garage.
Mrs. Mangle,
yes.
Maybe I'll be a little outspoken and say that we have had some dramatic changes over the last couple of days that have significantly improved the transportation services. And perhaps that may be why some parents that we might have expected to come out didn't. I'm very pleased with Ryder's reaction to the issues that have been raised over the last couple of days, and I'm firmly convinced that by the end of this week, virtually all of the issues that we're dealing with currently will be resolved. So I'm pleased that we don't have a lot of people here tonight, and I think it's for that reason. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill, and I'm even more pleased that this administration, this board, along with Ryder, was willing to make whatever accommodations needed to be made to accommodate the parents with concerns tonight. And I thank you for the backup plan tonight, even though it doesn't seem to be needed. I would ask one more time, is there anybody here tonight that specifically wants to speak about the transportation services currently provided by North Penn or Ryder? Okay, thank you. Let me ask the question again in regards to those that are here because they wish to speak about or hear about plans proposed or otherwise on the second high school. Is there anybody here for that issue? Okay. Let me point out, please, that the only matters on the agenda tonight should be listed in the packet that you, I hope, have picked up at the door. On tonight's agenda, we have video cameras on the buses and drug testing under support services. It'll be handled by Mr. Hartenstein. Secondary education has the Saturday school program listed, and they have administrators here to help with that. Also, elementary ed will be presenting a report on the summer library services. They are the only things that we are allowed by policy and procedure to handle tonight. Those of you here for that second high school and concerns can be well and amply addressed at our next meeting, which is Thursday. Help me with the date, somebody. The 22nd. That is an open public meeting that you can address any issue whatsoever. But by board policy, we have to adhere to the agenda that you should all have tonight. So those of you here for the second high school, we will not be discussing that, and by policy, will not be fielding questions from the floor on that matter. But would certainly welcome all of you, each of you back to address that topic next Thursday if you would. Not tonight. Not on the agenda. It was not placed on the agenda by the administration or President Bowman. It's not here. I agree with that. Okay, if we could begin, go on with the meeting. Bill Hartenstein, if you would you begin?
Thank you, Mrs. Mingle. With your permission, I'd like to ask John Cotrin, our Coordinator of Transportation, to join me
Certainly.
for the presentation. As the members of the board probably noted in the green sheet that I sent out, the primary concern of our transportation department is for the safety of our children, the 9,000 some odd children that ride our public transportation for public school students, and the almost 2,500 children who ride our rider system. I'm very pleased to be able to report to the board that during the 1993-94 school year, there were no accidents whatsoever that resulted in any injuries to any children. I think that's a remarkable testimony to the work that John Cotrin and his staff do. I would also point out that in the previous year that there were only 3 accidents that involved quite minor incidents where children were concerned. So we are firmly convinced that the job that is being done in safety training, maintaining order on the buses, all of those things are institutionalized, if you will, at this point in the North Penn School District. However, I must be very honest with you and say that I'm not really terribly pleased to be here tonight to make the recommendation to put video cameras on buses. In a perfect world, this is something that I would not like to have to do, but we don't live in a perfect world, and I think we're all very much aware of that. Those of us who work in the area of transportation really believe that the school bus is an extension of the classroom. We do believe that the school day begins when the children get on the buses, and we believe that the school day ends when they have arrived safely at home. We do believe that our drivers are every bit as much responsible for the health and safety and welfare of their passengers as classroom teachers are concerned for the safety of the kids in the building. We publish rules and regulations for riding on school buses. They are mailed out to all parents at the beginning of the year, and we try very hard to enforce those rules. We have a very specific disciplinary action program. And last year, we cataloged between 800 and 1,000 incidences that were of a nature to write up, to bring to the attention of Mr. Cotrin and his staff, and eventually to take on to principals. After an incident has occurred, the unfortunate thing is more often than not it becomes one person's word against another. And oftentimes our drivers feel as though that they've, for want of a better term, been abandoned by the system. They feel that they're out there by themselves, sometimes not feeling that they get all of the support that they ought to have. John tries very hard to make them understand that they do in fact get the support of administration, but it oftentimes becomes a situation where it's one person's word against another. John has done a lot of research on the issue of video cameras on buses, and what I'm asking for this evening is the board's consideration to begin a pilot project at no cost to the district for a period of 60 to 90 days. We have a company who is willing to give us equipment on a loan basis at no cost for a period of 60 to 90 days where we can analyze and evaluate whether this is something that would be worthwhile. North Penn certainly does not forge the way here with video cameras on buses. There are many surrounding school districts that are already doing it. I checked with our solicitor, Charles Potash, and he just recently gave an opinion to the Norristown people on the same issue. Certainly when you talk about video cameras in classrooms, and those of you who read the Reporter tonight, front page article about videos in the high school at Wissahickon School District, the issue is certainly not new, but it's becoming a tool, if you will, that school districts can use to implement a safety program, and the results, the surveys, and all of the studies that have been done has indicated that the school district can anticipate a dramatic decrease in disciplinary problems. So this is the rationale for it. We would like to try this on a pilot basis for the next 60 to 90 days. And At that point, we would report back to the board with our findings and most likely at that point make a recommendation for full implementation. We anticipate that a full implementation across the entire fleet to cost approximately $10,000. And for those people who follow the vandalism reports each month on the board agenda, you will note that we spend far in excess of $10,000 a year repairing vandalism to our fleet. So within 1 year, there would be a payback, we think, in this particular program.
Okay, Bill, thank you. I would open it up then to board discussion and comments around. Ralph, go ahead.
Question. In the papers I just read recently, the entire state of Delaware has put video cameras in their buses. Are there any other districts in this area that are doing it?
Yes, Ralph, there are. Just recently, for example, in the Philadelphia Inquirer last week, Springfield, Delaware County has voted to put them in. Owen J. Roberts School District will have cameras in all 55 of its buses this year. John, perhaps you know of some local Norristown.
That's closer to home. Norristown, in fact, Shelton, and at least 4 other districts are doing the same thing we're doing.
They're in the process now, but haven't done it yet. Okay. Other questions? Are you comfortable that the $10,000 ultimate cost is the ultimate cost?
I think what we're saying, Ralph, and it's important to point this out, we don't propose to put live video cameras on every bus. The cost of that would be prohibitive. We would put, I'll call them dummy boxes, I know there's a technical term for them, on all of the buses, and quite frankly, only a percentage of those boxes will be live. The students will not know which ones are live. They will be rotated. If we have identified a specific bus with some specific problems, obviously those cameras will be put on there. But in the course of the normal year, those cameras that we would envision purchasing 10 would be rotated amongst the entire fleet.
Okay. But you envision the $10,000 being the program that you're recommending.
That's correct.
If and when you'd come back to the board and say, let's do that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Tom, Terry?
Bill, have you selected which buses you're going to pilot it on?
I have.
And?
Well, I would rather discuss that privately, which ones are actually going to put the cameras in.
Ruin the surprise element of it.
You're,
Candidly, we will put them on the middle school buses to start. That's where 80 to 90% of my problems are. Which is really, in effect, putting them on high school and the elementary bus because they do 3 schools, but live cameras on middle school buses.
Well, are they going to also loan the dummy boxes also, so that you'll be able, otherwise they're going to be visible and stand out now, so students would know exactly which ones.
We also need to post on the bus, just like our rules, that in fact the bus is video equipped and you will be filmed. Children will see
Sure.
that.
You will put that there, but I'm saying when you're in full operation, there's going to be a similar box on every bus, not all will be live. When we go through the pilot process, are we also going to have that same effect, or are they going to really know?
As I understand it, Vicki and John, correct me if I'm incorrect, all of the buses ultimately, not in the pilot project certainly, but ultimately our goal would be to have the black box, if you will, on every bus.
Okay.
And looking at it, you will not be able to tell whether there's a live camera in there or not. The red light comes on,
Sure.
the expectation of the students are that it is live, they
Sure.
will not know one way or the other.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bill, Dave?
Bill, for the purposes of the pilot, they're going to use all live cameras?
That's what I was asking.
No.
They're not? Okay.
Really,
That's,
less, it will be empty boxes as well.
Okay, then as a part of the evaluation, obviously we're looking for a reduction in vandalism, interviewing the bus drivers, I assume, for their experiences and reviewing whatever videotapes they are as part of the evaluation.
The other thing which I should mention to the board, in addition to video, we have audio. And the audio portion is sometimes more revealing than the video portion.
Sure.
Thank you.
Last question. The $10,000 that could be the eventual cost, I'm assuming that from within the transportation department, it would be covered within the budget, And any budget transfer to cover it would be from within the transportation department, is that?
Ralph, as I had mentioned earlier, the amount of money that we spend on an annual basis to repair vandalism on the fleet is far beyond what it ought to be. Our expectations are, based upon what we have read, what we have heard from other school districts, is that the amount of money that we anticipate saving just this year alone will more than pay for this.
I guess my question comes, and hopefully that's true, but in any case, that would be when the 10,000 comes up for a vote, which I'm assuming it will, that will be my question again. Okay. Assuming it would be yes, the answer.
Either out of transportation or out of wherever the vandalism stuff comes. The money to pay the vandalism repairs comes from Mark's budget. Then would the 10,000 come out of there?
No, actually, it comes out of transportation.
That's strictly really talking about repair to see.
Okay, I'd be the last one to question unless there's anyone else. Bill, go ahead.
Bill, I have a question. As I listen to the conversation, it seems like the purpose of the cameras is to stop vandalism. Do we have a problem on buses with what you'd call discipline, fighting, stealing, all these things? And are we looking at that to help solve that problem?
John is the best answer.
Vandalism, from my perspective, is a secondary concern. The number one concern for me, and the reason I proposed this to Mr. H to begin with, was you mentioned we had close to 1,000 conduct reports last year. By the time it gets to a conduct report, one of the principals is involved in meetings with assistants. My concern is drivers routinely, almost every day, are stopping their buses to resolve discipline problems on the bus. Vandalism is secondary. If, in fact, I can reduce discipline problems, I think I can reduce accidents. Although we have a good track record for very few children being injured, we have quite a few accidents. Some are very directly attributed to problems on the bus. We routinely, at the end of a long school day, especially on a warm day like today, drivers will pull to the side of the road to calm the children down. I think video cameras are going to make a big difference for discipline. That's where I'm coming from.
Thank you.
Okay, Bill or John, I heard you say time limit was 60 to 90 days. Is that not short? Why not the whole school year for a pilot?
Well, this is several vendors trying to sell us cameras. Several have offered a 60 to 90 day. Please try it. That's why we proposed it this way. I'm sure they would extend it if we asked.
If we asked.
I think so.
And
Okay,
this
I think
will-
that 60 to 90 is short, especially if it's new. Everyone kind of behaves because it's new. And the point is, it needs to be a long-term solution, and we don't want the kids to get used to it and go,
I expect changes on the bus in 24 hours.
I would do. I would do. Good for you, go for it. But it's kind of a sorry commentary on Americana and student discipline going down the tubes. But you think about how difficult it is for a teacher to intervene into problems and disruptions in the classroom, and the thought of a bus driver trying to do that on wheels is a sad thing. And for safety alone, this is really worth it, in my opinion, because it only takes one child to really ruin and jeopardize a bus ride for an entire fleet of children. So I would support it, and I don't care about the privacy. I don't care about the privacy issue if anyone was to raise that, because there's children's safety and then there's privacy. You're worried about your privacy, then your kid better behave. Anybody else? We can move on.
I do, from what Mr. Cotran said there. You said there have been several vendors that have offered to loan us equipment for the 60 to 90 days. Were we intending to take that offer up with several vendors, or are we intending to try out one particular camera?
John has identified one particular vendor to do the pilot with. If we see the kinds of results that we think justify the $10,000, it will be bid.
Right.
And the board will have the opportunity to approve that.
Well, would there not be a problem then in securing or performing a due and fair process of bidding if there's been only one particular camera that's been tested, and therefore you would tend to have your specs according to that camera, and that can sometimes, a little technical difference can also rule out a number of competitive proposals.
We can generalize the specifications to a camera. It doesn't have to be this particular.
I just wondered why not put a few different ones on there. If they're willing to loan them, what is the problem with perhaps trying out a few different types and then seeing which ones actually perform better? I mean, that's shopping around.
We have, as John indicated, we've received calls and inquiries from a number of people expressing an interest in having us do the pilot. Obviously, they're hoping that with the pilot, that we'll
Right,
want to buy their
we'll
equipment.
buy their particular.
I've read any number of brochures, and for all intent and purpose, they're all the same concept. They all operate off of video cameras and the dummy black boxes. It's just a question of, do you go with company A, B, or C? And as John indicated, what we would do is write those specs in a general fashion, because there's nothing all that specific about this particular product. And it would be open for any number of vendors, and there are many. There are many. So when I say $10,000, the $10,000 is based upon the research that we have done. We may even see it for less than that.
When placed competitively.
When the big competitor.
Well, Mrs. Scher's remark is a good one, so you gentlemen will take that into consideration.
Sure.
And
Okay.
will that provider be bidding also? The one who's loaning us that equipment?
Probably.
I could see a difficulty
wish to.
factor there.
Yeah, they wish to. Yeah, but yeah. Okay, colleagues, I need 5 votes to put this on the agenda for next Thursday. Do we have that, Tom? Tom, Terry, yes, 2, 3, 4?
Simple enough.
Bill? Okay, that's it. Bill, continue drug testing, please.
Okay. As you've no doubt noted on the second green sheet, the school district...
Bill, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. I've made a mistake. I do need to open up the audience to citizens for questions that they may have. Would anybody have a question, care to address either the board or Mr. Hartenstein on the cameras? Sir, come forward.
Hi, my name is Bob Graziano from Tillmenson. I just have a question about Mr. Podash's recommendations. Did he address the privacy issues and anything like that? Do you have a summary of what his recommendation was?
Yes, Mr. Graziano, based upon his experience with the Norristown School District and the research that he did for them, I specifically asked him, what are the issues dealing with privacy? And his answer to me was, based upon his research, there were no issues that would preclude us from doing this.
Okay, any other issues that might produce some kind of liability for the district?
No, we will recommend to the board, hand in hand with this, a policy, so that obviously we don't want this abused in any way, shape, or form. And hand in hand, and as long as we have that, he's comfortable.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Graziano. Anybody else that wish to come forward and address video cameras on the buses? Okay, thank you. We'll move on then. Drug testing, Bill, thank you.
Thank you. As I noted on the green sheet, this is again one of those things that the North Penn School District and other school districts have literally no control over. The Omnibus Transportation Employee Testing Act of 1991 requires this. On January 1st, 1995, we must have in effect a policy and a procedure for drug testing and alcohol testing all of our drivers who have CDL licenses. Some of the board may recall last year when Griffith was here and made their report, Chip Taggart made a slight reference to the need to do that. And one of the things that we discussed with Chip at that time was whether it made sense for us to try to go out as an individual school district and solicit bids for drug testing, or whether, as he was suggesting, that we look strongly at some kind of a consortium. On the tail of that, John became aware of the Bucksmont Intermediate Unit effort in this area and has worked as a member of that committee, in fact, to analyze bids on behalf of the Intermediate Unit for a consortium of drug testing. At one point, we had envisioned putting upwards of $100 per employee into the budget to cover the costs, because as I've outlined here, there are 6 criteria under which employees must be tested. And they are 5, I'm sorry. Pre-employment always, post-accident, random, and then other incidences should they be involved in an accident. So with 90, round figures, 90 drivers at this point, that could run into some very big bucks. John, working with the Intermediate Unit and analyzing the bids, the Intermediate Unit finally decided to make a recommendation to school districts as a consortium, to retain the services of DrugScan Incorporated and DSI Medical Services. We have $10,000 in the budget for next year for drug testing. And based upon the figures that have been quoted through the consortium, we would not have to use all of that money next year. So that's a nice savings. John did a lot of checking with school districts and employers, and he can talk to this issue, who have used DrugScan and DSI and have been very, very pleased. It's basically a service where they pull in their van. John will designate a facility at the bus garage. The drivers will come in from their run. They will be told to go upstairs. The company will perform their tests and report back to us if they find a problem. Then there's a procedure which you see outlined in the proposal that will be followed. So at this time, I'm recommending that the board consider the approval of the contract for drug and alcohol testing with the consortium using DrugScan Incorporated and DSI Medical Services.
Okay, Bill, thank you. Board questions again?
Just one question. The rider folks also obviously apply to this law, and that is being handled not under this necessarily, but the assurance is there that...
Ralph, you'll remember we wrote that into the contract, but interestingly enough, Ryder has always enforced that anyway.
Okay, thank you.
A piggyback question on Ralph's. Ryder may have always enforced that, but is Ryder paying for that, or is that expected to be picked up by us? Was our contract covering that?
That was written into the contract, and it's their expense.
So the $50 per employee are specifically our employees. We are not paying for Ryder drivers.
To answer your question, we pay Ryder a fee every year, $1.5 million. Within that $1.5 million is the cost of their drug testing.
Okay, so there is not an extra billable for their drivers
No.
at our expense?
No.
Okay. Other board questions around?
Bill, could you please explain for me, as we've said here, you estimate a cost of $50 per employee, yet the recommendation is per the rates on page 11 of our proposal. And I'm seeing a listing of rates which extends beyond $50, depending on which services you're getting.
Right.
I don't quite understand the difference between the $20 that's there for DrugScan. There's a $5 for DSI. You know, those two companies, what the difference is between their services than an $18 on-site specimens and $25 on-site collections because of this whole listing here. Could you give us some explanation?
Yeah, as a point of clarification,
$50?
one of the things that we will have to decide, and very quickly, is whether or not we want to, for want of a better term, grandfather our staff and begin random testing after July 1, or whether we will go into this having tested all of our drivers before January the 1st. In conversations with Mr. Schmidt, we are leaning toward recommending that all of our drivers be tested at the very beginning. And then from that point on, a random test. Now, one of the things that works to our advantage is when you're a member of the consortium, and you must test, is it 10%?
I'm sorry, I was reading the numbers to answer.
I think on a regular basis, the random sampling is 10% of the staff?
No, it's actually 50%.
50% of the staff. That percentage comes out of the entire consortium. It doesn't come out of just North Penn's drivers. So we don't have to do that 50% of the North Penn drivers every year. If there are 15 other school districts and we have that list, we're going to do, okay, John is correcting me, and that's why he's sitting there. We are going to do 50% of ours. Go ahead.
The numbers are confusing.
Yeah,
Basically, what
thank
it
you.
says
I was hoping someone will answer
It
this.
took me 4 months to figure this out.
Okay.
The numbers are, we're either gonna pay $43 for a test or $48 for a test. And the difference is, we must do 50% of our drivers during the course of the school year, drug tests. That's a $43 test. We must do half of that 50%, which is 25%. We also have to test them for alcohol, that's a $48 test. So when I bring in 10 drivers, a random test that have been selected by the management company here, DSI Medical Services, of those 10 that we test for drugs, we'll also test 5 for alcohol at the same time. So 5 of the tests will cost $5 more. And they're going to do what they call a preliminary breath test on the drivers, which if that's negative, and I'm confident that it will be, then there's no additional test for a more sophisticated test, which is more expensive. But it's either $43 or $48. This is for on-site testing in our facility. What's not listed here is, in any of this information, if in fact the driver is in an accident and needs testing, that can be done on site, and we have to take them to a separate facility, and that's a different cost. But that's very isolated.
Again, somebody indicated, or I had mentioned that other members of the consortium have already indicated to John that they are joining Abington, Central Bucks, Colonial, which doesn't have a large number because they're contracted, Hatboro, Horsham, Lower Marion, Thacton, Springfield, Upper Marion, Upper Moreland, Wissahickon. So you can see that it's significant at this point. This survey was done last week. A significant portion of the districts within the Bucks Montgomery intermediate units.
If I may add, what's significant about that is this consortium of all these districts had a choice, one, to join, which they all did unanimously, and two, to be tested as a group, which meant we would have fewer or more drivers tested, but all without exception wanted to test their own drivers in terms of the 50%. And that still reduced the cost for us because of the numbers.
The money that's been budgeted, it is budgeted within the transportation account? And what would be the total dollars that you're estimating this to?
The total amount in there for the period of January 1st through June 30th is $10,000. There's $880 in there for physical. So in that particular account, Mrs. Shar, which is, I indicated on the green sheet, there's $10,880. And it's the account 27303.
10,880?
10,880. 10,000 of that was designated for drug testing.
Okay.
The other 880 is for physical.
And if you're going to start this earlier, is there going to be there'll be an additional cost that'll actually come about through the early start?
Sufficient funds to cover it.
John, I had a question. I just heard you say that if we do have a driver who has been, I guess, suspected of alcohol or smells of alcohol, whatever, he or she then has to go someplace else to be tested.
No,
Did I hear that?
No, if they do the test at our facility,
Right.
the preliminary test that indicates some alcohol in the system, a very minuscule amount,
Right.
they will do an additional extensive test with equipment they will bring with them. But there'll be an additional charge for that test.
I see that. But did you say something if there was an
About
accident, or did I hear
Well,
that? What else did I hear you
There's
say?
provisions here for, if in fact a CDL licensed driver gets involved in an accident.
Correct.
Then it goes into if there's injuries, if there's towing required, if our driver is found
And
to
there's
be at
another
fault and
test.
gets a citation, we will immediately go to the scene and we will transport the driver to a test site.
No,
Why
police responsible.
is that driver not jurisdictional responsibility and property of the police? Why are they then
Well, in
on?
fact, he is. And in
Okay.
fact, if they make that decision, they will be doing this for us. And we will get the
That's what I
results.
wanted to check, that they then become police, the police
Realistically.
problem. Okay.
Police make that decision, we're out of the
Then you're
picture,
out of
and
it.
we'll wait for their results.
And they handle their own drug testing?
Yes.
Okay, good. Any other questions around? We can move on to the next if there aren't any.
Audience?
Yeah. Audience of citizens, anybody that would wish to speak on drug testing of bus drivers based on a mandate of the state? Okay, I need a consensus to place this on next Thursday's agenda. Around? Any problem? Okay, so be it. Bill, you've had a long night.
Thank you.
And once again, a good job on whatever interference or intervention you were able to provide those parents in question. Good damage control. Okay, moving right along. Secondary education, we have a Saturday school program. We have some guests here at the table. I would, with pride and excitement, we would introduce School Principal Judith Miller and also Assistant Principal Larry Feely, both from Pembroke.
We're here today to talk to you about a Saturday school program that we tried as a pilot program last year. A few years ago, we reviewed our in-school suspension program, and at the end of the 1992-93 school year, we found that we had experienced an increase in school suspensions. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized we needed to find a way to deter students from getting involved in behavior that would result in these in-school suspensions. But after talking extensively to parents on the telephone and to teachers, we really wanted to find a way to keep students in class, because the biggest complaint that we got from parents and teachers was that when a student was suspended in school, the student would miss direct instruction for 3 school days, which is our typical in-school suspension time limit. We began then researching. We read education journals, but we especially did research with the help of other secondary administrators into area schools that had alternative programs, and we found that the alternative program that was most popular and seemed to be working in these schools was the Saturday program. And what we then went to work doing was designing a program that we felt would be tailored to the needs of our school and our system. And we asked then, once we did that, for feedback from parents and from administrators and from teachers. And after that, we presented our proposal to the cabinet and other secondary principals for input and concerns. We then revised the program, and we spoke again with cabinet and received approval to try this pilot program beginning in February of last year, and we ran it then for the whole semester. And at this time, Larry Feely will talk to you a little bit about what that program looked like and how it ran.
Let me just take a few moments to tell you what my involvement in the program was like. I am the person at Pembroke responsible for actually issuing suspensions to students who warrant them. Obviously, my first move when a student needs to be suspended is to contact the parent at Pembroke Middle School. I tell the parent at that time, look, we do have a program. Your son or daughter needs to be suspended for a period of 3 days. However, we have a pilot program at Pembroke that we can now offer you an option, and the option is spending 3 days inside of school, or taking advantage of the program, which meant that a child would spend but 1 day in an ISS program in school and come to school on Saturday from 8 o'clock until 11:45. I got to tell you that from February until June of last school year, there were approximately 100 phone calls that were made from my office. I tell you that about 95 of the parents took advantage of the new program at Pembroke Middle School. Those that did not, again I repeat, those that did not take advantage of the program basically didn't because of religious obligations taking place on a Saturday. So we had well over 100 students with us from February until June, an average Saturday attendance of about 6.8 students. Now you notice I said over 100 because we kind of became flexible with the program. We recognized back in February that we too had a concern with buses. And we were getting a number of referrals from Mr. Cochran's office, from his bus drivers, and we decided that we'd offer another option to parents, that because their child was getting a number of bus referrals and that we needed at a point to take drastic action, which would be removal from the bus. And most parents, when you say that to them, tell you that, look, you're punishing me, you're not punishing my son, because my son loves to be driven to and from school. So the option was given. Why not come to Pembroke on Saturday? Well, I got to tell you that the parents were overwhelmingly in favor of it. It helped to reduce the number of bus referrals that we were receiving. One student got quickly onto the notion that we were no longer suspending bus privileges. Instead, we were asking children to join me on Saturday morning. I got to tell you a little bit about the program. Students showed up at Pembroke at about 7:30 in the morning. With them, they brought a blue sheet which contained their assignments that they had gotten from teachers the day before. Part of the program consisted of an action plan, a verbal action plan handled with me in my office. I would take a child from the library, bring him or her to my office. We talk about reasons the child was given the suspension, what we can do to avoid coming back again. And in most cases, students obviously never came back to our Saturday program. What I also did is I had each of the 100 students write me a letter, and part of the requirement of the program on Saturdays was to drop the letter off to my office, before they left at 11:45. We're going to be giving the school board a copy of about 5 or 6 of those letters. I'd like to just read just 2 of them to you. Dear Mr. Feely, I think that the Saturday morning program is sending a message to Pembroke Middle School students. Most middle school students would rather be at home on a Saturday morning. I also think it is better than being taken out of class during the school week. This new addition to the school discipline system will help students think before they act and remember the consequences. I didn't write that. I had one of my students in the program write that. Just one more. Dear Mr. Feely, I think this program will teach students their lesson because most kids on 8 o'clock Saturday morning would much rather be sleeping, watching cartoons, or playing outside with their friends. By punishing students in this manner, I believe they will try hard to behave in school. I don't know if this is a compliment or an insult, but Saturday ISS is very boring, and nobody likes to be bored, especially on a Saturday morning. Sincerely. Well, I could go on with the comments that were given to us by the student body. They did not like coming to Pembroke on Saturday morning. Their parents were overwhelmingly in support of the program. At the end of June, what our offices did was to send out a survey to 60 of the parents whose children were in the Saturday program, and approximately, or well over half of the amount surveyed returned them, and the comments were tremendously positive. I'm going to go on, and we're listing these comments to our school board on page 3. Just several of them. Major benefit is the fact that the kids had to use their time. Hopefully this is a learning tool for the kids. They do something wrong, they lose their Saturday morning. Saturday detention acted to deter my child from misbehaving. It makes them think twice about doing something wrong and having to spend Saturday morning in school. And the comments go on and on and on. That's basically how the program operated at Pembroke.
At the end of the year last year, we met with the secondary principals and assistant principals to talk about how the program went at Pembroke. And we talked to them at length about what we felt were the advantages for the whole secondary system. And that's the reason why we're coming forward with this proposal to you today. There was agreement among all of the secondary administrators that we need to try this program in the secondary schools. And so we discussed the logistics, and by that we mean where would this program be held? Would it be held in all 4 schools, or should it be held in 1 school? How many people should be involved in overseeing the program? And for cost purposes and for ease of administration, we agreed that the program ought to be held in 1 school, and it should then have a teacher from each school there if there were an appropriate number of students that needed to be supervised. And in addition to that, we would have an administrator overseeing the program. Larry, would you like to talk about what the new program will look like?
We would, as Judy said, we would ask 1 teacher from each of the secondary schools to come to Pembroke at about 7:45 on Saturday mornings, beginning October 1st, I believe, and continuing throughout the school year. Each teacher would be assigned a classroom. We would communicate with the secondary schools through computerized email on Thursday and Friday to gather the names and addresses of those students in attendance. When the students arrive, we would have them complete written action plans as part of, I should say non-Pembroke students would complete written action plans. I would be there from Pembroke, and I would continue the verbal action plans with my students. We would then communicate to the various schools on Saturday afternoon the names of the students who indeed were in attendance, and of course those who may not have been in attendance.
As you can see at the end of the green sheet that you received a few days ago, the approximate cost of this program for all 4 schools would be $15,000 if we began the program on October 1st and continued it through to the end of the year, into the end of June and the end of school. And at that point, we'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Sure. Board?
In the green sheet, it says that it's been an effective deterrent for suspensions. Any statistics on repeat offenders?
I don't have an exact number on repeat offenders, but I can tell you that from February till June, comparing 1992-93 to 93-94, there was a 10% reduction in suspensions at Pembroke. Total.
Okay, so still it's a good deterrent, but we're not sure how it affects students that have been don't want to say continual trouble, but I'd just be curious to know if it affected that type of behavior.
That would be certainly a statistic we could keep this year.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, it wouldn't affect my support for the program. I like the idea of making the students pay rather than the parents pay from that perspective. But I would be curious about that, if it helped in that aspect also.
I like the concept, but I have some questions regarding the level of staffing that you're asking for. That, if I heard you correctly, you said you averaged about 6.8 students, and that most of this time they're working on their assigned work and receiving some assistance. And if that is our school ratio, it would seem to me we should be able to accommodate a program of this sort with far less staff on hand at that time, because you are talking 4 teachers, 1 administrator, to oversee what is a punitive study period. And I would see that if we're willing to spend money for instructional staff, it would be in our normal classrooms to this degree. I just have a real concern that there should be so much staff needed on one location. There isn't really a great savings in bringing them together in one building if you're going to end up allocating the same level of staff practically anyway.
We had several discussions about this, and there are days when we will have many more than 6. For example, there were days when we had 16 students. And what we agreed was that if we had fewer students from one particular school, 1 or 2 students that were coming to the program, we would not have a teacher from that school. We would incorporate those students to be supervised by a teacher that was already there from another building. So we had talked about that.
Well, the question would be then, what sort of staff-to-student ratio would you consider reasonable for this sort of program?
I think I need to share with you one of the reasons why we thought it was important to have a teacher from each building. First of all, students respond well to people that they know and people from their school who know them. And bringing a lot of students from other schools to work with one teacher that they might not know is often very difficult for that teacher and for the students as well for the program to be effective. So that was the reason behind having the teachers there.
Is the teacher part of the disciplinary process? I imagine the administrator certainly is, but would the teacher be a normal part of that process? Again, somebody that's recognizable to the student?
You mean in terms of was the teacher involved in the original discipline?
Not necessarily, but a teacher that is recognized as part of the discipline process.
No, I would say that it would be a teacher that the students recognize from the school as being a part of the school.
All right.
That would be if they encounter them, though, because they're big schools as they are. I know my children and my son in middle school doesn't know every teacher there, and it's certainly not assigned according to them. My only thing is I agree with the concept of moving it to Saturdays and dealing with it that way, but I do have concerns.
Just 2 points to Mrs. Scher's comment. The 15,000, if you look at the green sheet, says not to exceed 15,000. That's the maximum cost if we had 4 teachers on any given Saturday and an assistant principal present. Obviously, we wanted to put what the maximum financial exposure would be to the board. If we have less students, we would operate with less teachers. You raised another question that there's no real savings by centralizing at one location. We felt that the administrator present was absolutely essential, and to have it in one location meant having only one administrator as opposed to putting it in 2 or 3
That was the only one there that I did see. However,
Exactly.
again, I'd say 2 teachers would still reduce the price.
And in many Saturdays, that may be the case.
A question, if I understand it then, the $15,000 is assuming that we're going to have 4 teachers and administrators every Saturday, and the administration of the program is designed to call in teachers as needed versus, so it may be less than the 15,000. Is there any, I think the real benefit down the road is there any consideration, every one of these buildings currently has staff assigned, staff assignments to in-service, in-school suspension at the building. If this program works, there's going to be a lot of extra staff assignments, I'm assuming. And does this $15,000 include none of those?
Well, what we would be able to do is reduce the number of days that we had in-school suspension during the week. I think, is that what you're getting at?
I guess my point is that this cost of $15,000 assumes no savings in there, that if the program works, we would achieve additional savings there as well as the educational benefits.
Yes, because we would have additional.
So this is the maximum possible cost, and is it covered in the budget? Is my last question.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, so this is the maximum possible cost. It's going to be less than that because of how it's being administered, and we have the potential savings because of the reassignment of teachers who would normally be in school suspension at individual schools that may not need to because we're going to be putting them on Saturdays. Excellent program. I'll support it.
A couple of questions. Is this voluntary on the student's part, or can we require it?
I gotta tell you that up to this point, it was offered as a voluntary program, but everyone took advantage of the program. I'm not so sure that we can mandate that someone come to us on a Saturday morning.
I would clarify, it's not voluntary to the students, it has been voluntary to the parents. It's the parents' choice, not the student's choice.
Good point.
Hey, one of the things that always has bothered me, I believe in the need for suspension, if only to protect the other 25 kids in the classroom and allowing that teacher to teach those kids and get a disruptive child out. But I've always been concerned that I see a child sitting in an office for a day, I'm thinking, what's this child getting out of a school day? So I think the idea is great, and if we could make it mandatory.
It's very difficult to make it mandatory on a Saturday because we do have students of varying religions who would not be able to come on a Saturday. And therefore, we would not have a program for them if we only made it mandatory and had no alternative.
Okay.
Any other board questions? Tom?
How will it break down as far as pay to the teacher and the administrator? So they work from 8 to 11:45. What will each one make?
What is the hourly agreement?
Is it by the hour, per diem? How will you set it up?
The teachers and administrators would be paid by the hour. The teachers would be paid at the curriculum rate of $20 per hour, and the administrator would be paid at a rate of $30 per hour. There is a total of 100, if we run the program not counting holiday weekends, there would be between October 1st and the end of the school year, approximately 34 Saturdays where the program would run if there were students for every one of those days. That translates to 136 hours per person. And if you multiply those rates out, what you end up with is a total of $14,266. And we built in a little extra in the estimate because you never know what's going to happen with Saturdays or
Well, how are the teachers and administrators doing it now? Okay, a child will be suspended. Basically, is a teacher just doing work in the afternoon while they're in with that student on suspension? Right now, how's suspension handled? Or do all the students report to the principal?
On Saturdays?
No, during the week, on a weekday.
3-day plan.
On the regular program, our students are in a suspension room doing work that's sent to them by the teachers, taking tests, doing work. The teachers in their room are there to assist the students with the work that's being sent up.
Is it part of their normal work day?
Yes.
Any other board questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jen.
Do we offer it every Saturday for any incident that happens during the week, or do we have sufficient students to warrant that, or would you hold it every first Saturday or every, other Saturday, or?
From February till June, we had at least one student with us every single Saturday. And when I say till June, we also held it on Saturday, June 25th, which was 2 days after the school year ended, because I told the students that if you misbehaved for the last day of school, you would be with me on that Saturday. I was there by myself on that Saturday, June 25th.
That follow through.
It works.
Would it be more cost effective to offer, one kid and an administrator and a teacher is excessive, but does it still have the same disciplinary
The question's a good one, and no, it would not have the same disciplinary result, because one of the things that we need is to have as immediate response as we can to disciplinary problems. And if we only have an in-school suspension program on one Saturday out of the month, then, and that Saturday, say, is 4 Saturdays away or 3 Saturdays away from the time that the incident occurred, the student doesn't get the immediate impact of dealing with a punishment, yes, for what he did.
Likelihood, though, the efficiency increases based upon the fact that we're adding 4 schools, including the high school, which is 2.5 times larger in terms of student enrollment than the other student.
Could you offer this program at the high school in the large group instruction area? Which would accommodate more students and less teachers?
I think that you don't want to mix the kids from the various levels. You physically want them in different rooms.
We talked
When
about
that
that,
happens.
and in fact, it's something that we used to discuss even when we talked about summer school. It's often more effective to separate students from the various levels because they seem to respond better to the teachers in that situation, and so keeping them in a small room, or in one room, a regular classroom, seems to work more effectively.
Okay, any other board questions?
Just comment for the board, working here a little bit with some of the numbers for all of you to digest. It's 3.75 hours for each of these, and at those hourly rates, it's $75 per teacher on staff and $112.50 for the administrator for that 3.5-hour period. Basically, at the staffing levels we have here, I have $412 for those 3.75 hours, whatever number of children there. I would really like to see within this proposal a student per staff ratio that is acceptable to the board rather than leaving it so vague that we'll see how we go along and we may make some adjustments. But just as we do within our classroom guidelines for our teachers who are there, down to the very serious business of teaching students, that particularly in a program such as this, which is strictly for disciplinary purposes, we'd have to also consider who's really being punished here. Is it the student, is it the parents, or is it the taxpayers? And I really think that while we take in delivering a strong message to our students, and I support the general nature of the program, I do believe that we should also take in just exactly how much money we're spending in order to perform this task.
Can we charge the students a fee for that?
They are getting their programs from their teachers, the work that they're working on, so basically there'd be some guidelines, but I don't think that the staffing ratio is reasonable.
In light of that comment, let me ask a question. I guess it's desirable to administer the suspension in a time frame that means something to the student, but in light of that, if you had a minimal number of students for a given Saturday, have you looked at the fact that you would not even hold the program on a Saturday, less staff? I guess that's really the question, to try to make sure that you had more than one student and a teacher for a given school. I mean, I understand that you've looked at the aspects of combining schools to make sure you had it, but should we just have a stellar week where no one was suspended, where maybe only one person was suspended to move that person to a different weekend? Is that something you
I made
consider?
reference to the fact that there were 3 Saturdays that we had 3 or less students there.
Right.
Those Saturdays, we did not bring a teacher in. I was there.
Okay.
And we would plan to do and to work up a program similar to that when getting the numbers from the other schools, that we will be flexible.
So you would make every effort to
Yes.
make sure that
Yes.
it was appropriately staffed?
I would not bring one high school teacher for one student.
But Mr.
Okay.
Keeley, that cost there was 112 or so. The problem I have is that parents have an option. In other words, as you've said, it's voluntary for the parents. As much as you've said how important it is to have immediate discipline, I also know that you also have to have the willingness of the parent not only to bring them in on the Saturday, but they have an option if perhaps that particular Saturday isn't convenient, they'll do it the next Saturday. And so therefore, for their reasons, their personal convenience, we do allow them to perhaps have it delayed by a week or two And right now, the message is, and I think David was agreeing, that perhaps we should,
We don't allow the parents to have the option of delaying it a week or two. It's available the following
if they're
that
doing it
Saturday.
Saturday.
It's available that Saturday, or the other option is in-school suspension.
Okay, so then they must do that week, is that what you're saying? And there cannot be any other delay, it's one or the two? I believe some accommodations have to be made
Okay, we
on
need
the
to.
financial end.
Ralph.
A last comment. I guess I appreciate the administration, if I understand it right, they're coming back with the maximum cost of $15,000. They're indicating that it's under, that it's within the budget. We're not going to be doing budget transfers or games. And I guess that I thought I understood that while there's 4 schools, that they were going to administrate it with 1 administrator and teachers as necessary, and that it was going to be a reasonably run program, but the cost was in case we need all 4. And so this is a maximum cost, and I would support the program and ask that at the end of the year, or at perhaps at mid-year, we see how it's running. Because if it's anything like what happened at Pembroke last year, I think it's very worthwhile.
We will be able to give you at any point a running account along the way, the number of students and the number of staff that we use, so that if
Yeah,
you feel
I
that
would-
our ratios are out of line.
I would suggest that we revise a realistic estimate, because I assume that by budget time next year, we should have a handle on how many we're really going to need, and have a budget for next year for this item. That
Any
would
other
be a
comments,
realistic
questions from the board?
Did I also understand that there may be a savings in after-school suspension costs with this program?
They're in
I
school.
misunderstood.
They're doing
There
school.
isn't an after-school
It's
suspension.
doing school day.
There are 3 in-school suspension days. There's an out-of-school suspension program, which is for more serious offenses, but we have after-school detention.
Okay.
We don't have
I
suspension.
thought I misunderstood something.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I made a comment, I don't know if it's heard, but can we charge the students?
No.
I wouldn't support that.
I mean, it would reinforce the discipline. It would kind of be more
That's
deterrent.
a parental punishment. Just a comment I'd like to make, because I know they're both looking at me over there, looking for probably true confessions, and I'm going to make one. But I'm one of those unfortunate parents. I got one of those phone calls. And I've been blessed with 4 wonderful sons, and one I'm thinking of in particular goes to Pembroke. He's an honor student. He's a good boy. The Lord couldn't have provided me with a better son. But he can't resist a fist fight if someone offers him one. And he had one, and Mr. Feely called me. And of course, I was ashamed and embarrassed and disgraced, and I knew it would be in the Reporter the next day. But it wasn't, and that was the worst of my fears were alleviated. And it will be tomorrow, though.
And your son just received the worst punishment.
And when I get home, I'm going to get him again. But one of my greatest, I did not support this program all along the way when they started this, because my attitude was, we're not babysitting anybody's kid on Saturday morning. Enough's enough around here. And when I got that phone call, I was greatly embarrassed and chagrined, despite the fact that we all take that pretty bad as parents. And I can attest, as a mother who has been through this with her child, that there is no babysitting on Saturday morning. And I'd be the first one to squawk and make a fuss and continue to deliberate this tonight. My son went, and he spent the entire morning on the assignments that are prescribed in the list that is sent in by the school teachers. There's a lot of coordinating with the other teachers, and my son's head was in the book and his pencil was to paper the entire morning. Matter of fact, I was surprised at how much work he did. It makes me even wonder why we need so many staff, because you do have the nose to the grindstone, as it should be. And like most parents, I have active children, and they have plans on Saturday. They have a Saturday life, be it football, be it hockey, whatever. And he was truly punished because he missed what he does normally on a Saturday, on top of all the grief he gets at home, of course. But I just have to attest that it is a good program, and it worked in our family, and it worked with my son. Now, I can't say he won't be suspended again. He's got 5 more years to go before he's out of here. But that did bother him. I also understand you do work with arrangements when there's parents that have visitation and custodial concerns on weekends. You'll work with that?
Yes, yeah. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I'm sure, we do that.
Okay.
Okay.
For those with
I
custody.
did think that there were allowances made and
Oh, yeah.
that it did sometimes fall on an.
But those are court
On the
orders, they don't
side.
have a choice anyway, but they cooperate with them, I understand,
Oh, yes,
from others.
yes.
Okay. I have Mrs. Scher's concerns about some of that staffing. I'm not ready to ask you for, put on the table tonight for deliberation any, one staff to 10 kids. I'm not asking for that tonight, but I would like to see them come back on a regular schedule to update us, because there may be enough board members that will expect you to do that. If it looks like it's out of line or it looks a little too lenient, written report would be nice too. Any other board discussion before I open it to the audience of citizens? Is that it? Ladies and gentlemen, anybody wishing to address specifically the Saturday, help me with Saturday suspension program at the schools, please. Sir, would you come up and identify yourself?
My name is Louis Grace, I live in Lansdale. I was wondering why, if you bring the student in on a Saturday, his parent doesn't stay there with him for the 3 hours and receive some kind of counseling so that he could learn and the parent can also learn. Why should I pay for disruptive students on a Saturday? Let the parents be assessed if their child has to come in there on a Saturday.
Do you want your question field, sir, or is that a comment? Do you want
A question. Why can't the parents pay an assessment for their children to come in there on a Saturday? This sounds like a nice little perk, for a teacher or somebody who wants to pick up like $100 on a Saturday morning when they don't have anything to do. But why should I pay for it?
I don't have an answer for assessments that would be made.
Sir, we've noted your comment and it's appreciated.
I get weird.
I'm sorry. No.
Well, for one, we don't believe at the present time that it's legal to assess the parents for the Saturday program. That's our understanding. To make an impact, that's our understanding.
On a voluntary basis.
Well, they can donate money, that's not.
No. Time.
Oh,
Time.
volunteering their time.
Yes, to spend with their children who are disruptive and running it for the other children who are trying to learn.
They can certainly volunteer their time.
Vince DeFelice from Montgomery Township, 2071 North Line Street. I'd like to know several questions. What happens to a student if he doesn't show up on a Saturday? Because it might be raining today. He says, I'll go in for my suspension, but it's a nice day. He decides, I don't want to go in. And sometimes students do what they want to do, not what their parents want to do.
Back in February last school year, we thought that out, decided what to do, but I got to tell you that from February until June, all 123 students were present every Saturday. Nobody did not come. Our plan, of course, was if they didn't show up, that they'd have to serve their regular in-school suspension. Everybody showed. I even had students that would come for extra help, tutoring, that weren't assigned.
They came over on Saturday.
Okay, I'd like to know also, who selects the teachers for this program? How are they selected? Because I'm a retired school teacher. I taught for 35 years. And I know from being a teacher, there are certain teachers who are excellent disciplinarians and can handle any kind of student. There are those teachers who just can't, even though they are excellent teachers.
The system that we have used in Pembroke is to ask teachers to volunteer to do this. And last year, I believe we had 4 teachers in the program who rotated around, and all of them were excellent disciplinarians. And this year, we asked teachers if we were fortunate enough to have approval for the program, who would be interested. And teachers volunteered who seemed to gravitate toward this kind of program and have those good skills. So we've been very fortunate.
Okay, well, it sounds good to me. Okay, well, I question one thing about the cost of the program. I heard that you said that teachers get $75, the same as a substitute would get for a Saturday, and the administrator would get $112. Is that correct? Okay, then we're not talking about, how about the custodian, the cost of bringing the custodian in and heat for the building, because we're talking about winter days
I can only
also.
address the issue about the custodial. I open the building up and I lock the building when I leave.
In other words, there's no custodian involved. Okay, well, I guess that answers that question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions from the audience?
Yes, Bob Graziano again from Tomenson. That comment about the tutoring just raised a big red flag. I would hope that the statistics reflect only those students who were there for suspension and not for tutoring when they just show up. Thank you.
Any other questions from the floor?
Mr. Freeman, can I ask one that's developed here? Mr. Philly, you gave us the number of students for your program from February through June. What, do you have the total cost of the program's operation during that period of time?
I don't have it at hand.
Okay. Also give us some.
Just something I need to clear up. This Saturday's suspension replaces 3 days in-house, is that correct? And when you have a student 3 days in-house, you are using a staff, a teacher, to monitor that situation, is that not correct? So what we're doing really is somebody's assigned, and really with 3 days, to accommodate the 3 days, is now being reduced to one in-house and one Saturday. So by that very arrangement, there is a small economy than how we were doing it before.
Yes.
And the assignment of staff?
Yes.
But they're still running the other program, so even if there's one student instead of 5, it's still being run.
But they're opting the other way, are
And
they
it's
not?
still the same employee.
There are fewer days, however, whenever
Right.
the teachers have to be in there, so that means that there's more time for them to attend to instructional needs of students.
Am I mistaken?
That was my
I had-
point about you get some savings from the in-school suspension program and assignments.
But I had believed that the teachers who were serving the ISS were teachers being utilized to fulfill their contractual obligations. I didn't realize that throughout this period of time that we've actually been paying overtime or additional time beyond contracted salary for the ISS that's been going on during the day. Is that what you're now saying, that we've been paying
No, that's
in
not-
addition?
no.
And so therefore, that teacher really isn't there. If we were always utilizing staff as they were available for the contracted
there's less
salary.
days.
But they're available
That was
for other
the-
things
Right.
that they're needed
And now they
for
would
if they're
be
not in
used for
ISS,
other-
and that's the issue.
Right.
And whether they would be assigned.
Okay, we've gone full circle in this. Do we have 5 people to place this on the agenda for next week? Tom?
Yes.
Yes, Terry? This way?
Yes.
We have consensus. Thank you very much for the report. Okay, moving along, we're concluding then with elementary education summer library report. Charlie?
Thank you. This summer, we completed our 10th year with the summer library program, and as the green sheet information I provided the board shows, we have continued to have it grow. We opened the program in 3 elementary schools, Inglewood, Montgomery, and Nash, one morning each week for 8 weeks. And we also, beginning 2 years ago, began the idea of opening the Gwynn North School one evening. The data would show that the program was well attended in all 4 of the locations. We think it was enormously successful this year because we did circulate more than 14,000 books to just short of 1,200. I think the number exactly is 1,161 youngsters who were registered. When we prepare for this program every year, we prepare schedule cards, and it also has a registration card. We distribute those in all of the public schools, and we have for a number of years distributed in the non-public schools as well, so that the participants this year, as in years past, reflected both the public and the non-public school students. From a statistical perspective, the circulation this year increased by nearly 17%, as did the number of students who participated in the program. And I think that's noteworthy because that runs well ahead of the increased enrollment. So we can't say it's a larger school system and a larger student body that is accounting for that. I would attribute that kind of growth to the fact that I've literally besieged the principals and said, you've really got to promote it every spring. We have the teachers work with the youngsters to fill out the cards and work very actively to get them to understand how this works and to encourage them to ask mom and dad to get them there. We think this is really an educational bargain when you can circulate that number of books and assure, to a greater degree at least, that the youngsters who have a sound reading program during the course of the year will continue to read through the summer. I think we would all agree that knowing how to read, being taught how to read is one thing, but it's like most other skills, the more one practices it, the more one does it, the better one becomes. So given all of that, I would suggest to the board that for a cost of less than $4,000, that's one of the best bargains in town.
For activity short. Okay, good report, happy report. Any other questions or just comments around before I turn it over?
I'd just like to say that as opening new schools, there's been very minimal increases in the cost of this program. I think Charlie and whoever else is assigned to this has done an excellent job of bringing more schools online. Almost every year the district's managed to add one more, I believe.
Well, we've had 4, Vicki, the last several years. I think it was a couple of years ago we added the 4th one, and then we went to the evening program. You may recall 2 years ago we did a parent survey because we wanted to find out whether weekday mornings or evenings or Saturdays would best accommodate the public, and what we found out was that most people felt weekday mornings was best. There was an interest in the evening hours, and we did that. There was very little interest in Saturdays, and I suppose it reflects the fact that families are really pretty busy. Periodically, somebody says, why don't you add a 5th or a 6th school? We continue to look at that, but we really think that the 4 that we're dealing with are adequate. There is a slight inconvenience to some parents having to go a mile or 2 further, but I'm not at the point where I would recommend that we expand it.
Charlie, how are you finding the evening hours that are operating at Glenor's?
It works rather well. If you look at the numbers, there are, in terms of a ranking of the 4 schools, it's number 3 with nearly 300 participants. There were a number of people who said that if it were during the day, it would be difficult because mom and dad continue to work, the youngsters are in daycare, that kind of thing. So that's the need that we think we're meeting.
Okay, Ralph.
I guess this is the third go-around, and I was one of the people that keep pushing for more. And this is a low-cost, high-impact activity in the school district. I recognize that. I know that we have, because the county library is a long way away down in Norristown, the bookmobile comes up here, and having all of those books available during the summer is very, very attractive to me. And I think that there is probably some local aspects, and I really appreciate the activities as for opening evenings, but the cost of this is so low. We open up 1/3 of our buildings, and I would continue to encourage the administration to look at opening up more buildings and making it more available, more night times, more day times, mornings and afternoons, and more. We have 13 elementary buildings now, and I think elementary is the focus. There are 13 elementary buildings, and I think that if we tripled our cost at $12,000, it would be worth it to start seeing if we had mornings and afternoons and evenings at various places. It would look very well for us. And again, while it is less perhaps productive, I'm even would even encourage spending the money and be willing to vote to spend the money to start introducing it into the next level and get some of the middle school libraries open, because I think some of those kids would do it. I think the cost is so low and the potential benefit is so high, especially with the interest in libraries in this community. I would support a dramatic increase in this activity for next summer, even if we just do a little marketing effort and open it up more to see what happens. And if we have to pull back, we can pull back. But I'm willing to pay an extra few librarians and spend $15,000 or $20,000 on this activity if we can really see some benefits, and I think we would.
Ralph,
and I'd encourage that for next budget.
Ralph, to piggyback on what you're saying, we do intend to talk to parents at the middle school level to see if we can, what level of support there would be to begin that next year.
Absolutely. Right.
That might be
And I
beneficial
appreciate
for
anything we can
study,
do.
research and study. I don't know about all 13, but perhaps also looking into volunteers for a special event, a reading event. I know we have our Young Authors Conference and a few other events, but it might be interesting to see if we have some volunteers in the community that are good at this, that would have a special reading event of one of the schools that are opened, and promote that too, to bring new children in, because I believe you have a lot of the same students who've become accustomed to coming, and there are many others who haven't yet grabbed hold of it yet. And I believe, Ralph, considering the numbers that are here, whether you've got 280 or 319, if you were to open it up to all the schools, sometimes you'd be pulling from that same body of of participants and dragging that down.
I'd like to find out what we could do with
Donna,
it.
Charlie, go ahead, please.
it might be appropriate, since we're having this discussion, and, I usually ask the board to approve this in April or May for the summer. If it's the board's direction that we seriously look at opening another school or two, we certainly could do that. I would suggest that in terms of the middle school level, that's something that we need to continue to look at. At one point, we did open Pembroke when we had the summer school there. We thought it would support that program as well. What we found out was that it was not well attended, and we abandoned it because in summer work, which was largely remedial, I think most teachers said they really didn't want to give up the instructional time for those youngsters to go there. Now that we have grade 6 back in the elementary school, I'm not sure what the impact of that would be either, at the middle school level, because we know that youngsters who are moving on to grade 6 participated this summer at about the same rate that youngsters from other grades did. I can't speak to whether youngsters in 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, 11th, and 12th will go. I think there may be a factor that unfortunately sets in with age, that it's less productive or less a good thing.
However, Charlie, when we ran it in the middle school before, I believe it was connected to summer school, and the marketing was centered around remediation rather than a strong marketing campaign and going out to the parents and saying, encouraging summer reading. So I think we have to look at it a little differently this time around.
And when it comes up again this year, I will be a strong proponent and maybe even not support, because remedial programs are available in all the districts around, as it is in our district. And as I said for the last 2 years, and said again this year, and will say again at next year's budget, I would strongly urge the administration to take the summer program out of a remediation only and into an enrichment program, which will bring the kids in that will use the library at the secondary level. And I think that it is a better use of our facilities if we would do that.
Okay, so we should assume that a part of the lively discussion on the 95-96 budget will include summer libraries. Okay. At this time, we would open up to audience of citizens. Any questions or concerns about the summer library program? Anything you would wish to address?
I know I shouldn't, but I will, I ask. I would like to thank Mr. Recamp. He mentioned that even if this was tripled, he'd be glad to pay for it, and I salute him for that. But if I gotta pay for it, forget it. I mean, he volunteered, he says he's willing to pay for it. Now, you're going from $4,000 to $12,000. That's for morning, afternoon, and evening. Now, how about the hours between midnight and 6? That would make it 4 times better, and it would only be $16,000. I don't understand how you just take figures like, that's only $4,000, it'll only be $12,000, and you just throw figures around, and it's our money. I mean, that's what I don't understand. You just don't seem to have, like, the value of money. I mean, you have the ability to reach into my pocket, and I can't do nothing about it.
Sir, this will come up under budget, and certainly would welcome you back to be a part of that debate when it comes up. And your remarks were well taken. Thank you. Before we conclude, I'd like to announce that tonight this board will convene later for an executive session for matters of negotiations. Thank you. Also, not for discussion, but for information only. Our chief negotiator and director of personnel, Fred Schmidt, will give us an update on what we did all day long today. Fred, if you will.
Thank you, Mrs. Mangle. It's not going to take me all night to tell you what we did all day, but we met beginning this morning at about 10 a.m. with the NPEA, and we were meeting with the association under the supervision of the state mediator. That meeting ran until approximately 6:45, quite close, as a matter of fact, to this meeting here. The meeting was recessed by the mediator with the intent to structure another meeting fairly quickly, hopefully as early as Thursday evening. And under the direction of the mediator, under her directions, we will not be commenting any further about the process as it occurred today. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved, that's it, thank you.